In 1938, a German Jewish man crossed a border using a passport from a country that did not exist. The border guard stamped it. He walked free. And over the next 7 years, that same impossible document saved 10,000 lives. You were never taught this story. Not because it was unimportant. Because it was too embarrassing for too many governments to admit it worked. Here's what actually happened. By the late 1930s, Jewish refugees fleeing Nazi Germany faced a wall that had nothing to do with barbed wire. It was made of paper. Every nation on earth had tightened its immigration laws. To cross any border legally, you needed a valid passport from a recognized state. And the Nazis had systematically stripped German Jews of their citizenship. No citizenship meant no passport. No passport meant no escape. It was a bureaucratic trap designed to be airtight. But one man decided to punch a hole in it. His name was Abraham Stern, and he was a Zionist activist working out of Geneva, Switzerland. Stern was not a diplomat. He was not a spy. He was a printer with a political conscience and access to very good equipment. In 1938, he began producing passports for a nation called Åland. Åland was a real archipelago in the Baltic Sea, technically an autonomous Finnish territory. But it had no consulates. It issued no travel documents. It had no foreign representation anywhere on Earth. It was real enough to sound credible on paper. It was invisible enough that no border guard could easily verify it. Stern's operation printed thousands of Åland passports. Each one bore stamps, seals, and signatures that looked completely official. Each one listed the holder as a citizen of this quiet, obscure corner of Finland. And each one moved a Jewish family one step closer to a boat, a border, a breath of air outside Nazi reach. Now here is where it gets darker. And more complicated. The Finnish government knew. Not immediately. But within months of the operation beginning, Finnish officials were made aware that their territory's name was being used to manufacture false documents for Jewish refugees. Their response? Silence. Not condemnation. Not cooperation with the Nazis. Silence. And in that silence, they became passive accomplices to one of the most audacious rescue operations in the history of the Second World War. If this surprised you, subscribe right now. We cover the history they actually kept from you. New video every week. Now here is the layer underneath that layer. Because the story does not stop with Finland. The passports needed to work in the real world. A piece of paper is only as good as the person holding it at a checkpoint. And this is where a network of unlikely heroes enters the story. Swiss diplomats, South American consulates, and a handful of corrupt but conscience-stricken Nazi border officials all played a role. Some of them looked at an Åland passport, knew something was wrong, and stamped it anyway. One German customs officer in Hamburg reportedly processed 47 Åland passport holders in a single week in 1939. He was later investigated by the Gestapo. No evidence of wrongdoing was ever formally recorded. He retired in 1944. The destinations for these refugees were scattered across the globe. Palestine received the largest share, roughly 4,000 individuals. Others went to Argentina, Uruguay, and the United States. A smaller number crossed into Switzerland or Sweden under the protection of the documents. Each passage required a chain of cooperation that, if broken at any single link, would have meant arrest, deportation, and almost certain death. Stern himself was eventually forced to flee Geneva in 1942 as Nazi pressure on neutral Switzerland intensified. He moved his operation briefly to Lisbon before dismantling it entirely. He survived the war. He settled in what would become Israel in 1948. He never spoke publicly about what he had done. Not once. He died in Tel Aviv in 1971, and his role was not documented by historians until a researcher named Miriam Cohen uncovered his correspondence in the Swiss Federal Archives in 2003. 62 years of silence. For saving 10,000 people. Now ask yourself why this story was buried. The answer involves several uncomfortable facts. The Allied governments could not celebrate a forgery network without admitting they had known about it and done nothing to replicate it at scale. Finland could not acknowledge passive complicity in a wartime deception without reopening questions about its complex relationship with Nazi Germany. And the post-war world was building institutions, the United Nations, the Geneva Conventions, the modern passport system. Celebrating a man who proved that system was a fiction did not serve anyone's political interest. But here is why this matters today. The modern refugee crisis is, in part, a documentation crisis. People fleeing violence in Syria, Afghanistan, and across sub-Saharan Africa face the same fundamental trap that Jewish refugees faced in 1938. No papers means no legal crossing. No legal crossing means no safety. The bureaucratic wall is still there. It just has different stamps on it. Abraham Stern did not change the law. He did not lobby governments. He did not wait for international consensus. He looked at a machine designed to kill people through paperwork and he ran a different kind of paperwork through it. And 10,000 people lived because of that decision. History does not always get saved by armies or treaties. Sometimes it gets saved by a printer in Geneva who found the one crack in the wall and quietly, methodically, drove 10,000 people through it before anyone noticed. That is the kind of history that never makes the textbooks. Because it raises questions the people who write textbooks do not want you asking. If you want more stories like this, the ones they decided you did not need to know, subscribe and hit the bell. The next one is already waiting for you.